Joe Coy, what's good?
Just living, man. It's hard when you're on the road a lot and you can't like pay attention to yourself. You know what I mean? It's a constant battle just trying to get some rest, but got to do it. It's what I dreamed to do, so it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, that means that
Yeah.
you're being booked and you're making money and you're
Yeah.
doing your thing.
I was saying that to my friend the other day. I was like my son lives a good life, but man, I got to sacrifice a lot, you know? So it was his birthday on a Thursday. And then, of course, I was on the road Friday. And all I was thinking about was like, man, I need to be home, you know? But then I'm like, well, he's going to have a good birthday party on Sunday because daddy's making money right now, you know?
Right. So let's start from the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
I started in Tacoma. That's where I grew up.
Tacoma, Washington.
I was actually a military baby.
Okay.
So I grew up everywhere. Misawa, Japan, the Philippines. But I call Seattle my home because that's where my dad retired. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And you're half Filipino, half white?
Half Filipino, half white.
Okay. So what was it like during that time kind of growing up, being a mixed kid?
That time was weird. Like these kids now, there's a lot of mixed kids now.
Yeah, exactly.
But back then it was weird, yeah, to see a kid that had kind of like almond shaped eyes and they're green, you know what I mean? And they're
Right.
they're trying to figure you out in the 80s. Like, man, what are you? We know you're not white. You're something. There's flavor in there. But it was weird. But it was, I definitely got my taste of racism at that time. Just on my family side. That's why I don't know my dad's side at all. You know what I mean? I don't know my grandparents. They passed away, and talked to my dad about that. Like, it sucked. They didn't want to get to know my mom, and that's how it was back then. You can't blame them. They're from the old school. You know what I mean? And
Okay, so your mom's Filipino.
yeah,
And your dad's
white as can be.
And the white side of the family
Yeah.
wasn't cool with this half Filipino kid.
Yeah, I don't think they were all right with me because I was half my dad's kid. You know what I mean? But they weren't really feeling the whole mom situation.
Huh.
So never saw them during Christmas. Never got to call them grandma, grandpa. Yeah, so it was kind of rough. That's why when I do my stand-up, it's always about my mom and my mom's side because that's all I really know. It's just my mom and dad divorced when I was like 11, and then that was it. Didn't really see anybody on that side.
So you're basically raised Filipino.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't until I started getting pretty popular that's when my white side started coming back. Like right in like my mid 30s, I start seeing all this. My white family coming back. Hey,
Remember me?
Hey, cousin. Hey, it's your uncle. Remember your uncle that didn't buy you shit?
Can you get some tickets?
You remember me, your aunt that didn't get you shit for your birthday? Well, can we sit in the front row? Sucks, but oh well.
Oh,
you know what I
wow.
mean?
So how did you get into comedy initially?
Well, I always wanted to be a comic. Like when I saw Eddie Murphy Delirious, I was like, I think I was 11, 12, I was like, I gotta be him. That's who I need to be right there. I need that red leather outfit right now. If they make that for a 12-year-old, can I get that right now, please?
Right now.
And that's all I watched every day. When you're broke, that's all you do. Well, when I was a kid, you get a VHS tape and you put masking tape over the little square hole. I don't even think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. So you don't record over it.
You do that so you do record over it.
So you do record over it. Yeah, right, exactly.
So if it was like say it was Superman, whatever video you had, you just put tape over it and you could record over Superman.
Right, because you break off the little plastic pieces so you don't record over it.
So you don't record
Right,
over it.
exactly.
And then you put the tape over it so you can record over it.
Yeah.
And then and I remember I put that tape over there just to get this Delirious off of HBO. And I mean, I wore that tape out, man. It was like before I went to school, I watched it. When I came home, I'd watch it. At school, I was acting like Eddie Murphy. And I just knew right when I got out of high school, I was going to do stand-up.
Okay.
That's what I was in love with.
So what happened next?
A lot of depression. When you live in Seattle and you're broke, it's pretty depressing, man. It wasn't until I moved to Vegas when I actually saw sunshine for the first time in my life. I was like, yes, now I can come out of my shell. And that's where I started my stand-up, was in Vegas.
Okay, so what were like the first few stand-ups like?
Oh, man, horrible. I did a competition called Star Mania, and I had to be 21 because they were hosting them at bars. And I was only like 18, 19. I had to like grow the peach fuzz and then color it in and make it dark.
Okay.
And pray to God they didn't card me at the door. And man, I just bombed every time I bombed. I did this one show called The Biggest Fool Competition, which happened on April Fool's Day at the Tropicana. And man, I bombed so bad. And I did that thing where I didn't want to get off stage because I wanted them to at least laugh once. So I stayed on stage. And then to the point where the manager was on the side of the stage going, hey, can you get the fuck off the stage? And then I had to walk off the stage. But man, that's how it was the first 10 times, just bombing repeatedly. But I'm glad I stuck with it, man.
So what was, after bombing a bunch of times, what do you think was like your first break that came?
It was a coffee house. It was called Buzzy's Cafe. And I got like my first, I think it was just me talking. I remember going up and there was like maybe 4 or 5 people in the audience. Shouldn't even call it audience. It's just patrons buying coffee. And I just went up and just talked. Wasn't trying to do a routine or anything. I think at that point I gave up on what I was writing. And I just went up and I was just joking around and I hit some chords, man. People were laughing. And I was like, all right, I got it. I think this is it right here. I know what I need to do now. And that was it. It was an addiction after that. No more butterflies. It was always like, I can't wait till the next open mic. You know what I mean? So it was an addiction after that.
Sure. Now, when do you think you started actually making some progress in your career?
When I started making progress is when I lied about everything, man. I used to say I was on tour. I made my own resume. I did. I had my dad give me a headshot. He went and took some pictures of me, and I made a headshot. And I was submitting it to people saying I was touring the country, and I didn't even have like 10 minutes. I was just trying to get into clubs. Never got into anything. And then finally, BET, I don't know if you remember the show called Comic View.
Of course.
But they used to tour. It was called Comic View on the Road. And they came to Vegas. And they're at this place called the Country Star Restaurant. It was weird, but they had a stage there that sat like 500 people. And once again, I grabbed my fake resume and my headshot, and I ran all the way to the front of the line and asked the security guard if they can get the promoter so I can just hand it to him. I was like, yo, let me just hand this to him. I'm not on the show, just let me hand this to him. And he was like, let me go get her. Let me go get this. I was like, this is the first time I've ever seen a security guard actually help somebody. He's like, let me go get her. And he went and got her. Her name was Yvette. I remember her, of course, because she gave me my first shot. She came right up to the front door and I handed her my resume, and I was like, yo, I'm a local comic. If you ever get a chance, just look at the tape. And but if you ever come back, I want to, if I could open, or you don't have to pay me. And she said, well, come on in. She goes, we're already booked, but just come on in and watch the show. And I came in, and everybody that was on that show was late. Everybody was late. And so she looked at me and she was like, you want to go up? Because all the comics are late right now. So you want to go up and do like 5-10 minutes? And I went up and did 5-10 minutes, and that was it. I got off stage, and they were like, where the hell have you been? And I got booked on Comic View that day.
Okay.
And that was pretty much, that was it. It was that was kind of like that whole, it just catapulted me. I got to do all these black comedy rooms, and I was starting to meet black comics. All the guys I saw on Comic View were like becoming my friends, and you know what I mean, and hooking me up with gigs, and it was great, man. So Yvette Anderson, she's the one that gave me my first break, Comic View.
So you were primarily working to black audiences at that time?
Yeah, my first. It went from coffee houses and theater, like movie theaters, not theaters, like they had these movie theaters in Vegas where there would be some nights where they didn't show movies, and they would do a comedy night. So you'd have this big screen behind you, and just seats randomly. They would put people there. It just looked like miserable people in the casino that ran out of money and said, fuck it, there's a free show over here. And they would just sit and watch you and just make you feel bad because they were miserable. And yeah, it went from that to Comic View. And then I did the TV show Comic View, and I got a standing O that night. So that was my claim to fame on that, because I was submitting that tape to everybody, man. And then from there, I got the Black Comedy Tour, where we toured all the colleges, and you know, with the Black Comedy Tour, these colleges wanted diversity, so they couldn't just have a black lineup. They always had to have at least one cat that was
Right.
white, Asian, or Latino, and I was all of them. They're like, they're like, you got a Latino? Yes, his name's Joe Coy. He's from the Philippines.
Is that Latino? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Do you got a white comic? Yes, it's Joe Coy. His dad is white. Doesn't really know his dad, but he's white. So yeah, and I did that for about 2 years, and I got on the Def Comedy Jam tour. It was crazy, man. I got on the Apollo. I won the Apollo.
Oh yeah, you didn't get booed at the Apollo?
Yeah, I won it, man. I didn't. They booed the comic before me, and then I won it. Yeah, that was crazy.
I've gone to the Apollo. You know,
Back in the day, though, back in the '90s, like when it was hardcore.
Yeah, I went in the 2000s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
But even then, I remember it was brutal. It was like
Still brutal.
one wrong word, and you were just rained down by booze.
Yo,
And then
they'll
the guy-
help carry you out.
Right, and then the guy with the broom comes out.
Yeah, dance. Oh man. Oh, he did that like at least 3 times on my show, and I was just like, I remember my heart was pounding on the outside of my chest because I was like, if this man comes out and dances during my act, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. You know what I mean? I told everybody I was going to do the Apollo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was back in the day where there wasn't that many TV channels, so everyone knew what channel the Apollo was on. You know, it would have killed me, man. So thank God I won that one. Rudy Rush gave me that, so big shout out to Rudy, man. That was amazing.
So what was it like being, you know, a white/Asian comic with black audiences?
But the thing is, comedy's comedy, you know. As long as you're funny, you're funny. That's what I love about black audiences. They're the most honest. Out of all of them, and I hate to segregate audiences, but it literally is like that. You have your black audiences, you have your white audiences, you have your Latino and Asian audiences. And as long as you're funny, man, people laugh. Laughter is just, it's universal. You know what I mean? They know it's funny, and they know it sucks. It's just black audiences really let you know it sucks.
Like, have you gotten booed before?
Oh, yeah. But that was with any audience. I've gotten booed. Dude, I did a show in Idaho, man. I wanted to run to the car and just leave the town. You know what I mean? It was bad. Boise, Idaho, man. I remember I did that gig. It took me 8 hours to get there. And I was willing to, like, get in the car and go 8 hours back because I was like, I can't hang out here. They hate me.
Like, what was the worst thing that's happened during
The worst was also in Idaho. I was crowd working. I was opening for some comic. I forgot his name, but I was doing crowd work, and they just had a table to my left, just unruly. And I remember every time I kept doing some type of sex joke, they kept saying some girl's name, and I just said it. I forgot her name, and I was like, "Is Becky like the town whore?" Like that, right? And then dude stands up in the middle of the room in front of, because this thing was a nightclub, by the way.
Yeah. So
there was no seats on the dance floor because they didn't want to ruin the dance floor. It was one of those towns.
Okay.
So they sat everybody on the outside of the dance floor. Could you visualize what it looks like?
It's weird, yeah.
And then of course there was a drum set behind me because I'm performing for a band that's going to come out and kill it. And all they had was a spotlight way at the back of the room, and you just see this cowboy just stand up in front of the spotlight like it was out of a movie, and you just see the cowboy hat and everything, and I'm looking at this silhouette, and he's like, "That's my sister, man," and I'm like, "Fuck!" Like I just froze, and then now I'm begging for my life. I'm like, "Hey, you know I'm joking," like, you know what I mean? And then I did this whole thing about I can't fight. I'm a bitch. Like, you fighting me is not fair, because I'm not going to fight. You're a cowboy. You're just going to rope me. I remember saying that. You're going to rope me in like 5 seconds. And I remember getting on my back, and I had my hands next to my ankles, and then he loved that. Like, I was performing for one man at that point, and he loved it. He's like, all right, I'll get you a drink. And I was like, oh, man, no, you're not. I'm fucking out of here when this is done. But that was it, man. That was one of those, There's like 3 gigs that stand out. That's the one that stands out the most. Idaho, and then there was another one at the Comedy Store. And where I had all these people coming out to write up about me.
Snitch on you?
No, they were gonna do a write up, like an article, like,
Oh, okay.
young comic Joe Coy comes to LA, and I was so excited, man. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get a magazine write up, and dude, I ate my ass on stage for like 8 minutes. And I remember when I got off, the writer walked up, he was like, we'll reschedule.
We'll give you another chance.
We'll reschedule. Okay, Joe? Let's not write about this. I don't think we want this on print.
Right.
I'll come back, maybe in a year. That fucker never came back.
So what do you got coming up?
Shooting my special in Seattle, so it'll be all me. I'm paying for it, wearing all the hats.
Cool.
Doing it myself, man. It's gonna be my third one. I can't wait. Cannot wait on this one. And then more Corolla show, and then my own podcast, The Koi Pond, man. So on the Corolla Network.
I'm a fan of Drake. I'm a fan of the idea of Drake. So no disrespect against Drake.
What do you mean by the idea of Drake? What does that mean?
Meaning that if he has a ghostwriter, he's an idea. He's not meaning that it's a perception created that he's not really writing the lyrics, and it's just like here, let's make this in the factory and put it out.
I'm just on top of my game right now, Vlad, and I'm just getting blessed. I'm booked 4 or 5 times a week, 60, 75K a show, man. I'm winning right now, man, and I'm just steady trying to increase my hustle.